Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Inside the Therapy Room. I'm your host, Sam Sellers. I'm a registered therapist, a wife and a fur mama, and I'm passionate about breaking down the barriers and stigma attached to therapy. I want to begin by first honouring the traditional custodians of the land we live and work on. Today, Kate is on Bunurong land and Sam is on Gundungurra land. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the traditions and cultures of our First Nations people. We must always remember that the land below our feet is, was and always will be Aboriginal land. Today I'm chatting to Kate Barber, who has been informally counselling and caring for people who are at their most vulnerable for over 25 years as a registered nurse. She decided to formalise this by becoming a counsellor 5 years ago. With her own personal experiences with family illness and the experiences of many others who she has helped throughout her nursing career, she has gained an understanding of the complexities of the varied emotional, physical, and mental challenges that we face in our daily lives when we are faced with illness and our diverse individual responses. Kate works predominantly with people who are living with life-limiting illnesses such as cancer and motor-neurone disease, and the different layers of loss and grief and life adjustment that comes with those illnesses. Kate works with children, carers, and anyone who has been affected by life-limiting illnesses. Today's episode is all about therapy for those navigating cancer or life-limiting illnesses themselves, their carers, or their loved ones. We hope you enjoy joining us inside the therapy room. Welcome, Kate. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much, Sam. It's nice to be here.
I'm excited about this episode because I think it's probably a topic that people tend to avoid talking about because it causes a lot of emotion and it can be really triggering for a lot of people. But it exists, right? It's got to be talked about. If we don't talk
Absolutely.
about it, then we just are living with, the unknown and the uncertainties all on our own. So
that's exactly right. Yep.
So you are here to chat about working with people who have what you deem as, and I've not actually heard this term before, which is life-limiting illnesses.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what is a life-limiting illness.
Thanks, Sam. So I suppose in a nutshell, a life-limiting illness is an illness that limits someone's lifespan. So the majority of people that I work with are people that have been diagnosed with cancer. I also do a lot of work with people that have been diagnosed with motor neurone disease and living with that. So it's also things like any, I suppose, diseases like motor neurone disease, MS, that sort of thing. I have some clients who have got early onset dementia as well. So they're the main sort of areas that I work in, and the majority of my clients would be those people living with cancer and their carers, support people, significant others.
Okay. What led you to this space? Because it's a pretty specific area.
Yeah, it is. And there's a lot of obviously challenges in that and a lot of nuances in counselling this cohort of people. I am a nurse as well. I've been a nurse for many, many years. So I worked in the oncology space, the cancer space. I've also had lived experience in this space. So both my mum and my sister and my uncle have died from brain cancer. So it led me down the path to this space. I realised that there was a need for specific support in the cancer space. And then by chance, MND came into my being as well, and there's certainly a big need there as well. So I suppose it was lived experience and just I'd been nursing for a really long time and I needed to get off the wards. I was exhausted, and I did both at the same time for a while, but this was a great opportunity and niche to go into, and it's actually a really beautiful privilege to be able to work with these sort of people.
Yeah. And I think, having somebody who has had lived experience and who would know, I guess, the medical jargon that is
Correct.
being thrown around as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What a lovely space for somebody to not have to try and explain what all of that is to you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Sam. And so many people that I see say, oh, it's so good to not have to explain my disease or explain what the doctors have said. They can just say, yeah, I had a PET scan and I know exactly what they're talking about. So it certainly frees them up to be in a space that they feel safe, they feel heard, and they feel that they can share whatever they need to share.
It almost frees up the space for the actual therapy.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So many of my clients have said to me, oh, gosh, I felt like I saw a counselor, I saw a psychologist, and I felt like I was educating them about my disease.
Yeah.
That's not what they're there for. So, yeah, it does free up a lot of space for them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I don't think you should have to educate your therapist. I mean,
Mm.
I think absolutely express and educate on your lived experience. But when it comes to, particular terminology and things like that, you ideally want somebody who is going to understand that
Yes.
even just from a base level. Um,
Correct. Yep.
but as a nurse, I would imagine that you are understanding from multiple levels,
Yes.
not just what's happening for these people emotionally, but also physically.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm.
What sort of things are people with cancer, people with MND coming to therapy for?
Oh, so many things. But I suppose in a nutshell, the biggest thing I deal with is grief and loss
Yeah.
and life adjustment, because these sort of diagnoses and also things like chronic pain, which I also deal with, those sort of things, they change every aspect of somebody's life. They turn the life that they thought they had completely on its head. And there's so many adjustments that need to be made in every aspect of their life. And
Mm.
there's so much loss, there's so much grief around these diagnoses as well. So they would be the biggest things that I would deal with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
And I would imagine not just grief and loss for the individual, but for their family, their carers, children. And
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about things like, I'm just sort of, I am by no means an expert in this area. It's,
Yeah.
but I'm just sort of thinking off the top of my head, what about things like body image and
Big one.
yeah, and career and work?
Yeah. And finances and sexuality and
Yeah.
relationships and every aspect of someone's life changes. And unfortunately, I suppose in our medical model, a lot of those more intricate things aren't discussed as much as they should be, especially around sexuality and gender specific issues as well, and relationship changes. Our medical model, which is brilliant, we have a brilliant medical system in Australia, we're very lucky, but it's very medically driven. So quite often the supports to try and manage all those other aspects of disease and the effects of treatment aren't addressed as thoroughly as they could be.
Yeah. And I guess, I'm sort of just thinking about the fact that we understand that trauma is held in the body
Correct.
and so, you know, navigating what is a trauma somatic symptom and what is
Mm,
a illness specific symptom and trying to sort of balance that out. We don't hear specialists saying or medical specialists saying, oh, it's trauma related.
mm.
There is still very much that trying to find a medical or a physical reason why XYZ symptoms are occurring. Uh,
Yeah, exactly right.
is there
Mm.
space in the way that you work to look at those sort of physical symptoms of trauma on the body?
I think one thing that is a really good thing to remember is when people get diagnosed with an illness, they're bringing all their previous life experiences with them. So that can impact the way they manage that illness, the way they manage side effects, the way they deal with going into a hospital. There's a whole lot of life experience that we bring that doesn't go away once they have a diagnosis. So all of those things tend to bubble away underneath and all come to a head because of that, exactly what you're saying, the somatic effects and the trauma effects of, and it could be past trauma or it can be trauma to do with what they're going through. And that can be as things that people don't think of, simply the way that they were told that they have cancer or the way that they were told they've been diagnosed with a life-limiting illness. So that in itself can cause trauma. And then situations that happen within the hospital setting, there's a whole range of things. So there's new traumas, there's existing traumas that are brought in as well. And then, like you're saying as well, there's the physical symptoms that can be, I suppose, magnified from the things we bring to our current situation.
Yeah. And I mean, we know well that there is, medical trauma and things like that. And you're right, it is not always the big things. It can be, a doctor passing off, your symptoms time and time again for it to then turn out to, be something like cancer. That's that medical gaslighting almost, is a really a very real thing for a lot of people, particularly if they're going through, a lot of pain or a lot of illness, with people just saying, oh, well, it's not a big deal. Like it's just headaches. It's just, whatever it is. Yeah.
And then it goes on to, having treatment. Every single treatment we do for cancer, for example, affects our body. So whether it's chemotherapy, radiotherapy, immunotherapy, surgery, every single thing that's done for a person to get through their cancer has an effect on body. So, body image, there's trauma from that in itself. And there's a huge impact on body image as well. So it's very multifaceted, and it's not simply about the diagnosis and living with a life-limiting illness. It's quite a lot of it's very multifaceted in the things that people have to deal with and try to process.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there I'm just sort of thinking about there is often, I find, like I sort of mentioned at the beginning, it's a topic that's often not talked about. It's sort of hidden away, don't bring up, the C word to people and things like that. And so do you find that there is a lot of, I guess, what we would call toxic positivity?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and not wanting to actually sort of wanting to bypass the real emotion and the real effects because, I've got to stay positive.
Yeah, there is absolutely that. And it's one thing that I certainly understand that a lot of people don't know what to say with someone that's, for argument's sake, we'll talk about cancer, MND as well. People don't know what to say. But if you look at it this way, if you walked into a patient's or a person's house and they had a broken leg, you would say, oh, my goodness, what happened to your leg? Yet if someone sees someone that's has lost their hair, or they know that they're going through cancer treatment, or they know they've had a diagnosis of MND, there seems to be the elephant in the room. It's not mentioned. Whereas, the one thing I would want to say to people is ask.
Yeah.
Just ask, say, and, obviously avoiding platitudes, but to be able to say, wow, this must be really tough for you. How's it going? Or I'm thinking of you at the moment. Understand if you don't want to talk about it, but just know that I'm thinking of you.
Yeah.
Just otherwise it becomes this big thing that's not discussed, and it just seems it makes it quite isolating for the person. And obviously there's going to be times when they don't want to talk about their illness. They need time off from talking about it all the time, but just that check-in, just saying,
Yeah.
that brief check-in, how you doing? It must be really tough for you.
Why do you think it is avoided so much?
I think there's a few different reasons. I think people are a little bit, it's very confrontational for some people. For example, if, there's a 46-year-old with MND and you're that age, it's very confrontational because it's something that you can relate to in terms of age bracket and, oh my goodness, I can't believe this happened to them. I
Mm.
think a lot of people don't know what to say. So they err on the side of not saying anything at all.
Mm.
And I think it's perhaps a bit of a fear of the unknown as well.
Yeah. It's a hard topic for people to talk about, isn't it?
Well, it can be if you make it a hard topic, I think. Like, unfortunately, with cancer, 1 in 2 people have cancer now or will be affected by it. So there's not many of us who don't know someone or have a loved one that's been affected by cancer, especially.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think these things need to be a hard topic. I think illness is part of life, unfortunately. And like I said, if it's ignored and if it's pretending it's not happening, it's one part of that person. They're
Mm.
still the same person. It's just
Yeah.
one part of themselves. They're not, um, I suppose, they're not their disease.
Yeah.
They're not defined by their disease. It's one part of them. They're also a brother, a mother, a sister, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a partner, a
Mm.
work colleague, all of the things. They're still that person. So I think avoiding it just is like the elephant in the room, and it makes them feel uncomfortable. And also it's that walking on eggshells a little bit. It doesn't need to be like that.
Mm. And it would, making sort of, the last thing that you would want to do if you're visiting a loved one who has cancer, the last thing that you want to do is make them more uncomfortable. They're
Yeah,
the ones going through it.
yeah,
And
correct.
so um, bringing that into the conversation,
Mm,
bringing it into the room as opposed to just trying to shove it in the corner and
yeah,
pretend that it doesn't exist. Yeah.
yeah. I think too there's a bit of a fear about upsetting people,
Yeah.
but really they've already got a cancer diagnosis or they're already been diagnosed with a life-limiting illness.
Mm.
There's not much more that's going to upset them more than that. So obviously in saying that, being able to say the appropriate things, like one of my biggest things is people saying, I know how you feel. No, you
Oh,
don't.
yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you've got a life limiting illness as well. You still do not know what it's like for that person.
Yeah.
So every individual has a unique experience. Um, and yeah, it's normalizing that they're going through that and it needs to be acknowledged, and um, that you as a friend or colleague, whatever, that
Mm.
you see them.
Yeah. And I think, there's ways that you can ask people if you're worried that, talking about it is going to make them upset, right?
Correct.
It's just
Yeah,
the way that you phrase the question, hey,
yeah,
I'm really sorry, would you like to talk about it?
yeah.
Or do you
And
want
I
to talk about
understand
something
if you
else?
don't. Yeah,
Yeah. Or do you want to
yeah,
talk about something else?
correct.
Because, when you are living with something that is all consuming,
Mm,
I find grief, if when someone passes away, I find the same sort of thing happens is
mm,
people dance around the subject.
yeah, yep,
And, realistically, people just want to talk about something else sometimes and
yeah,
don't even want to talk about that. So,
yeah. And
but
giving them that choice, like
yeah,
to be able to say, you know what, I'm thinking of you. This must be, I don't even understand what this is like for you, but I'm happy to talk to you about it if you would like to, happy not to if you don't want to.
yeah. And giving them that choice would mean so much more than what people would realize, right? Because they're like, I guess what comes with cancer is so much that is outside of your control.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. One big thing I talk to a lot of my clients about is boundaries around conversations,
yeah.
because they're the ones living with whatever it is they're living with 24 hours a day.
Mm.
So when they go out or they're meeting friends or whatever, and the friends want to talk about it, which is great, those friends are coming in for that short amount of time and then going out again. Whereas for the person that's unwell, they're actually going out to have a bit of a break from all things illness related. So we talk about boundaries, being able to say to someone, if someone wants to talk about it or brings it up, say, thank you so much for for thinking of me. I'm actually having a cancer-free day today. We're not talking about it.
Yeah.
And then deflecting that conversation to something else. Let's talk about your holiday that you just had, or what's happening with your kids.
Mm.
So being in control of those conversations and putting boundaries up around what they want to talk about and
Yeah.
when.
Yeah. What is it like for the people around them, the loved ones, the partners, the spouses, the children, the family members? What is it like for those people?
It's a very different experience for a lot of, especially carers, and the worries that they have are very different to the worries of the person living with the illness.
Mm.
Um, Carer support and carers can be anyone. They can be family members, they can be partners, they can be relatives, they can be neighbours.
Yeah.
Carers tend to take on a lot of worries and a lot of the mental load, I suppose, of, because they don't want to worry the person who's unwell, they take on a lot of worries themselves. So, there's a lot of different issues, because relationships change when someone becomes unwell. So lots of different issues there.
Yeah, and I mean, I've just had a bout of illness this year that sort of spanned, 5 or 6 months, and it changes your relationship. My
Mm,
wife suddenly became, a nurse at home and a
correct.
carer, and
Yeah.
and it's sort of, so I can just imagine if that is ongoing, is if that is um if someone is considered terminal, or, those sort of words start to come up,
Mm.
that changes a relationship, right?
It does. It does. And, if, what we touched on earlier, sexuality and intimacy changes, body image changes, demands, role changes are a really big one. And again, there's a lot of loss and grief that goes on, and a lot of anticipatory grief.
Mm. Do you talk a lot about death with your clients?
I do.
Mm.
And it's not a thing we do well in our country, I must
Yep.
say, and in our
Yeah.
culture. But and it'll sound really macabre, but it's one of my favorite conversations to have with people, because it's a safe space for them to talk about the biggest issue in their life
Yeah.
without judgment and without fear of upsetting anyone, and it enables them to clarify what they want. Of course, with voluntary assisted dying, that's a very big topic of conversation amongst the people that I speak to.
Mm.
Death and dying is something that a lot of people want to talk about, and there's not a lot of platforms, I suppose, where they can do that, especially in our medical model.
Mm.
Mm,
Yeah, we don't do death very well in
we do
Australia, do
not.
we?
No, we
Yeah.
do not, unfortunately.
I don't really know what that's about, but I mean it's probably very layered and complex as to why we do
Yeah,
this. But
yeah.
um, do you find that those conversations look different with different age groups, different
Mm,
cultures, different faiths?
absolutely. Yeah. And spirituality, belief, religion, all of those things come into play. And of course, age is a huge thing. A lot of people, I suppose it's expected when you're older that death is going to come earlier, which it may do, but
Yeah.
also there's a lot of grief for that age group as well. Yes, they might think, well, I've had a good life and at that age, but they've got family, they've got children, they've got a life that they lead. So those conversations are very different to conversations that I might have with someone who's in their 40s or in their 30s that's facing, those life-limiting illnesses and an earlier death than what they would have hoped for or dreamed for or expected in their life.
Yeah.
Mm.
Do you work with children?
I do work with children. Yes.
Do you work with children who are going through cancer or children of parents who have cancer?
Yeah, more so that. I don't work specifically with children that have cancer. There are great organisations that do specific counselling for those cohorts. The kids that I see are kids that have had a grandparent or a parent that's living with a life-limiting illness.
Yeah. You must talk about it differently with
Very much so.
with children.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the biggest thing with kids, I think, is that they don't have the life experience to put things into context like we do. So their outlook is very innocent and very blunt pretty often. I remember one kid that I was counselling, and she said to me, well, when mum dies, I want her phone. So, exactly, it makes you think, oh my
Oh,
goodness, what that child is thinking. As an adult, we would say, well, that's the
yeah.
last thing. But as a child, they don't have the maturity to understand what dying means in terms of the longevity of the implications of that. So they might understand that dying means you're dead and you go to heaven or you'll get buried or whatever it is that the family believe in, that they teach their children. Long term, they don't understand that means mum, dad, or whoever's not going to be there.
Yeah.
So it's certainly a very different conversation, and there's a lot of narrative therapy there and a lot of play therapy that helps with that, trying to see where they're at and what's going to help them try and adjust and cope with things as it moves on.
Yeah. I would imagine that I guess a saying, but it's terminology that's used around children a lot that I don't particularly like, which is that kids are resilient. And I personally don't love it because I find that resilience is something that children become because they need to and in order to survive. But we do know that children can handle a lot more than we give them credit for, though.
Yeah. And they pick up on a lot too. Like, I
Yeah.
think I have a big problem with the word resilient, because what is
Yeah.
resilient? Like, is resilient being able to have a really big cry about something and
Yeah.
show your emotions?
Yeah.
That's what I think it is. But
Mm,
I don't think that's what most people would think it is.
no.
But kids have this incredible ability to pick up on what's going on. They pick up on the energies in the room. They pick up on whispered conversations. They pick up on mum and dad aren't home as much and grandma's looking after them more. What's going on there? Why is mum crying in her bedroom? Why is dad grumpy? Kids pick up on all of those things. And probably the best thing to do is to be honest with kids about what's going on in age appropriate language, obviously. But hiding things from kids will make up their own stories in their head. And quite often, those stories are very, very different to what we would think they're making up in their own heads. So that honesty and being able to have open communication with them so that they can ask those questions, to us might seem inappropriate maybe, or not what we would ask, but it's their little kid brain trying to make sense of what's going on with all the changes around them.
Mm. And I often say to parents, there's a book for everything these days.
Oh, yeah, there absolutely is.
Literally everything. There is a book for everything. And so sometimes I will encourage parents to have those conversations about big things or topics that are hard to talk about in an age appropriate way, using books or other stories or videos or, things like that,
Yeah.
a little bit easier for them.
Yeah. And there's lots of resources out there, like organisations like Cancer Council and Canteen, Red Kite. They have amazing books for kids around death and dying and illness, actually, as well. And M&D Victoria have resources for children and adolescents as well. So I think, for parents, it's reaching out for support through those organisations, through someone like me that gets it and understands some of the challenges that they're facing. Um, so for parents to know they're not alone, they don't have to navigate this alone, because it's tough. It's
Yeah,
tough conversations.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
As a therapist, I'm sort of going, what is it like for you day in, day out, hearing these heartbreaking stories
Mm.
about and getting we connect with our clients, right?
Mm.
I care about them, I think about them when I'm not in a room with them. There is a connection there. What
Yeah.
is it like working with people knowing that there is a real possibility that the end of their life is coming
Mm.
relatively soon?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing is it is such a privilege to work with people at the most vulnerable time in their life. I have been known to shed tears with clients before. It's sad. I'm dealing
Yeah,
with sad stuff. Like, there's no denying. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for them, or, I cry with them sometimes, and
yeah,
I'm absolutely okay with that.
yeah,
And, some clients I see for years, and then the end of their life comes, and I've walked beside them that whole way. So it gets sad. I think I have an ability where, when I finish with a client in a sad situation, I can just stop there.
yeah,
So I can leave that client and their experience in the room. When I leave my office at the end of the day, I very rarely revisit those appointments that I've had throughout the day, or that home visit that I've had, or whatever it is.
yeah,
Obviously, there's going to be some clients, like all of us, that stick with us a little bit longer,
yeah,
or a little bit more often. But I do make a concerted effort to not think about my clients when I'm not working. And that's my self-care.
yeah.
If I did, I couldn't do this job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Mm.
think there is that need as a therapist to sort of compartmentalize almost a little bit,
Yeah.
to be able
Yeah.
to, we can't carry everybody with us.
No.
Otherwise, we are then not in a state to be able to support the people that come into the room. Um,
Yeah. And
but
also, we can't support ourselves,
yeah,
vicarious trauma and
yeah,
that sort of thing. We need exactly to be able to walk next to them and with them side by side, but to not carry them.
yeah.
Mm.
And I love hearing that you shed tears in sessions
Oh,
with people, because there is this, I think surely we are moving past that stoic, deadpan
yeah.
face therapy, because that's not real. We
No.
are just as human as the person or people sitting in the room with us.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's sad, and that's
Yeah.
that's the reality. And to sort of sit there with no emotion, how does
Mm.
that help somebody? How does that
Yeah.
convey empathy and convey understanding?
Mm.
So I think that showing real emotion is part of the experience. I think that's
Yeah.
part of therapy.
And it's also sitting in that space with them,
Yeah.
just being able to give them space
Mm,
and to sit with them, not try and solve anything, not try and give them a strategy to use, or not try and therapize them.
yeah.
Sometimes you just need to sit in the space with them because they want to be heard. And, you know, like I said, quite often they don't feel they can have these big conversations. They don't feel heard,
Mm,
and they need to be able to talk about those big things, to be able to make decisions about end of life and make decisions around what they want their life to look like for however long that may be.
yeah. Yeah. What is it like in the room? We've sort of touched on a few things, but are there things that you talk about in sessions that people might be surprised about? What is it like in that space with you?
I have to say there's humor in the room. Like I'm
Yes,
just
I
listening
love
to this
that.
conversation and I'm thinking, gosh, everyone's going to
I
think that I
know.
sit in the room and cry with people, but it's not like that at all. We have times of tears, and I don't cry all the time, even though I am a bit of a crier. But
Yeah,
there's also a lot of humor in
yeah,
these big conversations, which I love, and I love it when my patients bring their humor to the room. And that's one thing that a lot of people use to get through what they're going through. And I think it's full on. There's a lot of big things talked about in the room, and I suppose probably the biggest thing that I bring to the room is introducing grief and loss to people, because we're very good at knowing grief and loss comes with the death of somebody.
yeah,
We're not so good at acknowledging that people are grieving the life they thought they were going to have. They're grieving their health. They're grieving the dreams that they had, the plans that they had with their partners or their children, or they're grieving not being able to see their children grow up. So there's such a complexity around anticipatory grief and complex grief in terms of the many layers.
yeah.
So, so many of my clients, they'll tell me what's going on with them, and they'll say, and I will say to them, what you're experiencing is grief.
Mm,
And so many of them are like, oh my goodness, I never thought of that. I never thought that was what was happening. And it makes a lot more sense for them knowing that it's not just about what's happening to them now. It's about all those losses, cumulative losses, and anticipatory losses as well.
yeah. Grief is much bigger than just death,
Oh, yeah.
much bigger. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I would imagine that there would even be conversations around grief for the carers and the loved ones, that their grieving process starts much earlier than
Yeah.
when that person actually loses their life.
Absolutely.
That's like the culmination point,
Mm.
but their grieving process starts the day of diagnosis, I would imagine.
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. And that is the big thing. That's when it starts. And for some people, that can be like for something like MND, motor neurone disease, where every day something changes
Yeah.
in their physical function, and or every week there's changes.
Mm,
So, just when they're getting used to perhaps a bit of muscle weakness, then something else might happen. So the grieving process is long and drawn out,
yeah.
and it can be very variable on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. And you're right, for carers, it's a very different grieving process as well. So that's the biggest thing I think that we talk about in the room.
Yeah. And us humans, we are not always great with change, right? And so,
Mm.
when there is an illness that every day can look so different, and there are
Yeah.
things that are just completely out of your
Uh,
control,
yeah.
what
Yeah.
is it
And
like for that?
uncertain.
Yeah,
Mm.
what is it like for that person to
Mm.
almost be um, at the mercy of their body?
Yeah. Yeah. And it is that huge amount of uncertainty and that total lack of control. For a lot of people, they're thrown into what I call the hamster wheel of medical jargon and the medical model, and they get that diagnosis, and it's just a whirlwind for anyone with a life limiting illness, no matter what it is. It's an absolute whirlwind.
Mm,
So there's not a lot of processing time. So
mm,
sometimes by the time they find me and come and see me, they're still deer in the headlights around trying to work out what this means for them and what it's going to look like moving forward. But yeah, absolutely right. That grieving process starts at diagnosis, and because that's when their world is literally turned upside down.
yeah.
Mm.
What about all the anger? I would imagine there's lots of that. And anger in general is a topic that's not talked about. It's often, don't be angry, it's anger is a negative emotion in, I
Mm.
guess, in inverted commas. Um
I
yeah.
suppose, yeah, I see every range of the spectrum of emotions, and I am very mindful to tell them all there's not a wrong emotion, there's not a bad emotion. Every emotion is a good emotion.
Mm.
And I quite often use, the iceberg of anger
Mhm.
and that analogy, and that helps people work through that. And I'm very much about naming emotions.
Yeah.
And if someone appears to be angry, I'll say to them, it appears that you're angry. Tell me about that. And it not only gives them the opportunity to clarify, they might say, no, I'm not actually angry, but I'm really frustrated at A, B, and C. Or they can say, yeah, you know what? I am really pissed off. I
Hmm.
am really cross about whatever it might be and why this is happening. And, there's a lot of, for people that have faith, there's a lot of anger at God and whoever it is they believe in.
Yeah.
So it's working through all of those things. And yeah, anger comes up, and I embrace that with them because I think it's a really important emotion to have around this.
Mm. And I is it, I guess, for you when you're supporting people, is it a wraparound effect, I guess, in terms of do you are you working with the specialists? Are they aware that you are involved? Is it sort of like I use the term wraparound, but people may not know what that is.
Yeah,
Um,
I suppose you mean collaborative, like in terms of
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um, I get a lot of referrals from organisations, so Cancer Council, from MND, so they're aware that I'm involved in that, and sometimes I will get correspondence from them, from the treating team, but really it's a very it's sort of almost a separate thing because there's, especially in hospitals, they do have psycho-oncology support, and but some people want it separate from the hospital, and unfortunately, there's wait lists with that as well. So some people just want it separate from the hospital environment, and to see someone completely s- separated from what they're going through, and at a different location as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, what what myth are we smashing about people who have cancer, people who have life-limiting illnesses? There would be a lot of misconceptions, misunderstandings, things like that.
Yeah.
And so this is your chance to pick what comes up a lot or pick one that really grinds your gears about.
Just one.
Yep, I know. I know it's hard. We
Ah,
probably could have done a whole episode on it.
yeah.
But what myth is there about this cohort of people and their loved ones that we are just getting wrong?
I would say the biggest myth is when they say they're okay, don't
Mm.
take that at face value. And if you want to help them, do help them. So by that I mean, when someone gets diagnosed with something like this, it is so overwhelming. There are appointments, there are all the things. There is so much going on, and so many people will say to them, just give me a call. Let me know what I can do. They
Uh,
don't know what you can do. They don't know. They're just trying, they're like their little duck legs are going mad under the water because they're trying to keep afloat. So they don't actually know what they need or what they need you to do. So being able to do practical things for people, offer to pick up the kids from school, offer to take the kids after school for a play, cook them a meal,
mm,
just go around and mow their lawn for them, offer to take someone to chemotherapy or to an appointment so that the carer can have a bit of time off.
yeah.
Do something practical to help them. I think that's one thing. And like I said before too, they are still the same person. So keep in contact, even if you're sending a text every day saying, or every couple of days saying, thinking of you, with a
Mm.
little funny emoji or whatever that might look
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
It's not so much about um, having to have those big conversations all the time. It's just checking in and, yeah, offering the help, as in doing something practical for them, I
Yeah.
think is a really big one. And I think too, remembering that there is a lot of grief associated with this, with any illness. Any illness, actually, it doesn't have to be like life limiting. It's chronic illnesses as well. There's a lot of grief around that. So being kind and gentle to people, and yeah, not keeping that contact so they're not losing you,
Mm.
because they've already lost a whole lot of stuff that they thought they had. And
Yeah.
then when friends, and mostly friends, but sometimes family, withdraw because it's too hard for them, that is another source of sadness and grief for the person that's actually living with the illness or their carers.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think, it is so important to remember that not every conversation, not every check-in message has to be about the cancer or the illness.
No,
Send
no.
send a funny video or
Yeah.
things like
Send them,
that.
did you see what happened on maths last night? Oh my gosh, it
Yeah.
was terrible. Reality TV, it's always terrible.
Yeah.
They're not defined by their illness. They're still the same person.
Yeah.
So, offering to take them out for coffee, or saying, I'm going to pick you up on Saturday if it suits, and we're going to go for a drive.
Mm.
Or, like I said, offering to actually do things rather than asking them what they need. They don't know what they need.
Yeah.
They're so
Yeah.
overwhelmed. They just don't know what they need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that goes for, I would expect also the carers and the loved ones, because they're
Yes.
just as overwhelmed. I will
Oh,
often
yeah.
say that when a loved one, like with bereavement or grief, um, to not say, what do you need from me?
Yeah.
Because they have no idea.
They have
And
no
so
idea.
so it's
Mm.
like, I'll pop by tomorrow at 3 o'clock with dinner for you tomorrow,
Yeah.
for you,
Yep.
being really specific, and it gives the other person the opportunity to say, oh, actually, we won't be here at that time,
Yeah.
or something like that. But
Mm.
it reduces, the last thing that you want is to cause more overwhelm. So
Yeah.
really
Correct.
specific
Mm.
and practical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. But you are
Mm.
not defined, they're not defined by their illness. I love that.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And
They're still the same person.
yeah,
Mm.
and I think that is probably a really beautiful way to end for people. I
Absolutely.
think
Yeah. Yep.
for people to remember that about their
Yeah.
friends, their family, the people that they work with, they are
Yeah.
not their illness, whatever it
No.
is.
Yeah, exactly. And they're still that same person.
Mm.
And the relationship you have with them is
Mm.
still there. It looks a little bit different and it's changed for them, but they still need you, and they
Mm.
need that support more than ever, probably, but they just need you to be who you were before they got diagnosed.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the work that you do.
Ah, you're welcome, Sam. I do love it. I get so much joy out of speaking to these people, and like I said earlier, it's an absolute privilege to be able to sit in that space with them at such a challenging time.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And I, you know, I would have no idea about all of the medical jargon around cancer and MND and things like that. So the um, I guess the sort of, what is the word that I'm trying to get to? The two-pronged approach that they get from you must be wonderful. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's certainly I make it very clear that there's no medical
Mhm.
things going on at all in the appointment, but that I do get what they're talking about. So it doesn't need to be an education session. They can just talk about whatever they need to. And it is quite a nuanced area, which, again, it's an absolute privilege to work with them and to hold that space with them.
Yeah. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, Sam. It's been lovely to chat today, and I appreciate what you're doing too. It's fantastic to talk to different therapists and see what we're all doing out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
We hope you enjoyed joining us inside the therapy room. Thanks for listening.